Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Welcome, Eric, tonight.
Thanks.
This is exciting. I haven't really talked to you in the last 2 years, so I'm excited to get an update here too and find out what you've been up to. But let's go back to 2 years ago or so when things were first getting started.
Yeah.
What was the original idea you had for Klook Travel, and what has it turned into today? What's
Sure.
the basics of the business?
Yeah, I remember, I guess 2 years ago when I met you at Starbucks, I was telling Josh about the idea of basically connecting activities, things to do, basically, with travelers. So I think back then we're still thinking is, I think you also brought up, potentially how, looking at Airbnb and Uber connecting people to people, so guides to people, or connecting activities to people. So when we started, we had that aspirational, or we wanted to go right away into doing a P2P platform. So individual tour guides or people who are just have free time and can bring you around. I think very quickly we actually realized that it's actually very different from the Airbnb model or the Uber model, because when you go for an Airbnb, you are looking for really a space. The host is really just an additional person just there. I mean, what you really care is that space. And when you are given that space, you're sort of satisfied with that. I think Uber to some extent is similar. You're looking to get to that destination. So what you care about is the ride, the car that's bringing you there. But when it came to services, when you go around looking for things to do, you have a tour guide. And the tour guide is so actively involved in the space, whereby how to standardize that service, I think we have yet to find a way to really effectively do that. And then quickly we also realize is how many people are really looking for such, I guess to some extent we feel like a niche service, someone who brings you around. So very quickly we pivoted and to focus on operators. So people who are professional in this space, who actually basically do this as a living. So they could be running a tour, or they could be looking for an activity, from a cooking class to skydiving, or to even something like Airport Express train. We also provide to Disneyland. So a range of now activities, but for now we don't touch on the P2P yet, because to be honest, we haven't cracked that model. So that's kind of where I think we started off, and then quickly pivoted to something slightly related, but different from what we started when we chatted back then.
Yeah. So I come to you. Walk us through a few of the different use cases here, because you talk about like Disneyland Express. Why wouldn't I just go on the Disneyland Express myself? Why would I come to Klook? Why would I use Klook versus going directly to some of these providers?
So when we started. When we started Klook, or looking into this business model, we actually look into it. We believe as a business opportunity, because when you look at flights, hotels, I think things have really moved on, right? People book their hotels and flight much easily online or on mobile, and then this meta search that came on. But the activity space was really, really backwards. For example, for attractions or theme parks, you still see a lot of people who are going up and lining up in front of the gate, and then buying that ticket for basically full price. So just for that, we thought that it was very too traditional, whereby the technology was not really playing a part in it. So we came in and we decided to say that we will change how the operators or these attractions operate. So for example, a lot of them actually didn't even have e-ticket system. They were basically handing out that physical ticket. So we changed that. We help a lot of these attractions upgrade to an e-ticket. So once it's upgraded to e-ticket, we can tap into that system. So you can literally buy an Airport Express on mobile phone on our app, and you can get it for around 30% off. So instead of going there and lining up and getting that at the same full price. So we were able to launch that in almost all the major attractions, to allow for this convenience and I guess to some extent cost saving. And then the next part of the activities is basically the small guys, the small operators. Those people were actually still kind of doing pen and paper. So you call them or you email them, they'll write down your name and they'll put it down, and then they'll call you back, I don't know, a week later and let you know if there's a space or not. So for that, our system is really upgrading how they are doing things. So we provide them with a system that they'll be logging in to their bookings. They can take on reviews, they can power their own online bookings. At the same time, we are also the distribution channel. So such that then they will be, so when you go there, you'll show them your e-ticket, your QR code, they'll scan it and everything is good. So that is where the two part that we're really changing. So that basically you technically don't have to go directly to them. Oh yeah, one more thing is when you think about travel, or when you go to that, let's say you go to Thailand, you look for an operator. You think about it, that operator do not have an incentive to really serve you the best because you're only a one-time customer. To some extent, you won't be going back to that same operator, even if you go back to Thailand. But if you go through Klook, then it's a little different because we hope that you come back. So we have incentive to really find the best operator, the best experience, and try to give you really the best experience to the customers. So I think that's where we come in and try to make a difference and try to have a different value add.
So what countries are you operating in right now?
Right now we are in around 30 destinations in Asia. Mm-hmm. So, and we're offering around 1,500 type of activities. We focus a lot more on quality rather than on quantity. So we don't, for example, for a place like Hong Kong, we probably have around 50 to 60 activities because we believe that, as people go travel more sophisticated, especially in Asia, short haul travel, people go for 3 days or maximum 5 days. So even if I offer you, I don't know, say like 100 activities, there will be an overwhelming of choice. So that you wouldn't know how to choose. So we can curate the selection according to different categories of interest so that you can easily pick out what you want, and then we can focus on that quality of the experience to make sure that it will be a good experience type.
Okay, so the normal experience, the experience most people get right now, I'm going to Malaysia next month. Yeah. So I'm going with my family, and we book our tickets. We book a hotel, we get there, we figure out the taxi or whatever, we get to the hotel, and maybe we look online, we figure out some activities we want to do, and we go and we try to make that stuff happen. That's the way things happen today. Mm-hmm. How does Klook change that experience? When I go to Malaysia, I go on Klook, what am I going to find there that changes and improves that experience for me?
Yeah, so traditionally, I think a lot of people would be researching before they go. Mm-hmm. So now, not a lot of them will be booking ahead of time. Mm-hmm. They will book when they get there and find that local operator to make that booking. So this is a fundamental problem of the activity space. Why it couldn't move online was because people were booking in the destination rather than pre-departure compared to flights and hotels. So when we launched our web basically in 2014 in September, after a few months, we quickly launched our mobile app because we believe that mobile will be the game changer for this industry because people will be booking and need to book spontaneously in the destinations for something that's happening tomorrow. So after launching our travel app, our bookings, 60% actually quickly moved into mobile app. So we are pretty much a mobile first strategy now. So as a traveler, you can be in Malaysia, say you want to go to the Twin Tower, and instead of lining up there, you can just take out your app and book the ticket. And then usually for pre-booking, there is a separate line. Now our pre-booking isn't about booking before you go. Our pre-booking allows you to book in the destinations. Mm-hmm. And that's something, to be honest, very hard to achieve. But for now, we've been able to launch it for almost all the major attractions. Malaysia, not yet. So we're launching Malaysia next month. But that's how we'll be changing how you guys travel and the convenience added to it.
Okay. And so in Hong Kong, there are attractions like the Peak or something. I can pre-book that, and then I get into the pre-book line.
Yes.
Instead of having to wait in that 2-hour line on a Saturday to go up, which I've done before.
Yes, that line is crazy. So for that, we even go into a little bit more upstream. So what we do now, we actually also run our own tour because when we were in the market, we saw that there is a need for a tour. So Peak Tram is a very special one where even you have an e-ticket, you can't skip the line because there is a limit by the actual tram. Mm-hmm. So, but they have a special thing is a tour guide can bring you to skip that line. Okay. So we saw that there's such an opportunity in the market and no one was doing it. So we created our own tour. So now we'll have a daily tour with 5 slots every day that are bringing people and skipping that line to go in. Okay. But the majority-wise, once you have an e-ticket, you can skip the ticketing queue and go in.
Yeah, because when I was there, I actually saw a guy and he had a Klook sign.
Oh,
and
you
he was
did?
holding
So it was
it up,
recent.
and I was like, well, hey, I know that brand, but what's that guy doing here?
Yeah, so that was a special one where we're running our own tour. So, and then for airport transfers, we're also running our own. So we don't compete with Uber because Uber mainly is for kind of within the city type, right? Not a lot of people nowadays still at this point of time will be like, oh, I'm going to land in the airport and then take my Uber and see if there's a car around. Because what if there's no car? Then what am I going to do with all my luggage and so forth? So we saw an opportunity again whereby people would be pre-booking for airport transfers. So now in Hong Kong, in Thailand, we run our own network of drivers that basically do airport transfers for travelers back and forth from the airport.
Okay, so you're overlapping with a lot of other services. I mean, you kind of overlap with Uber, you're overlapping with these things, but really you're providing the full experience because you're connecting with tour guides, you're connecting with all these people who provide travel or tourism experiences.
Yes.
Not just travel, not just
Not just
accommodation,
travel.
but kind of the full package.
Right, the full package of anything that you can think of when you get to a destination. What do you need? We even provide a SIM card. Right? If you need a SIM card, or a Wi-Fi router, if you need to leave Hong Kong and go to Japan, you can get it for like $18 for a day, and you can get it from Klook. Similarly, you just buy it and just go to the airport and pick up that router and go. So we even go to something as basic as that, but to also some bespoke experience like a helicopter sightseeing tour experience from Peninsula. We also have that. So it's a range of products that we do now.
Okay, great. So when you started building this business 2 years ago and you had the idea and then you had your pivot, at what point did it start becoming a real business? When did you transition from an idea to, okay, we've got a team together, now we're going after funding? Talk about that process a bit.
So we really put the idea, together. I think it was June of 2014. And then back then we were 3 people. All 3 of us quit our job to start this. So it was a very big commitment for us to do that. And then within 3 months, I think what a lot of startups find hard, especially in Hong Kong, there's a shortage of qualified tech engineers. And especially at the beginning, you may not have as much cash to build out a team. So we found an outsourcing company to start off with the first version of a website and the back end. So and in such case, you can actually ramp up much faster rather than building yourself. So we took about 3 months, and then we launched it in September, and then we brought back everything in-house. Then we started to build our own team, and then we started talking to investors. So we didn't bring in investors at the very beginning. So we invested our own money into it to start it off until February of 2015. That's when we officially closed our seed round of investment. And it was a relatively interesting situation. It was the ex-CEO of Tencent e-commerce business, but Tencent nowadays don't run their e-commerce business themselves, so we've kind of pivoted and give it to JD.com. So then that person is now more doing angel investing. So he invested in us at the very, very beginning. And then quickly, 6 months later, then we did our Series A. So basically, we closed it in September of last year.
So how was that going for that Series A? What were some of the lessons you learned from that? What are some of the tips you might have? What are some mistakes you might have made during that process?
I think the most important thing I realized coming from raising from the Series A, which came mainly from three main parties, was one is Matrix Partners and then one's China Growth Capital. So both of them are based in China, but Matrix also have in the US as well. And then one of an individual investor called Francis Lung in Hong Kong. We decided to not raise from too many investors in one round, because we actually really wanted investors to be focused and to actually commit to what we are doing and really help us out. So that was one, I guess, tactical strategy what we found. Second, I think what we really cared and then we really tried to show to the investors is commitment. I think if you think about it, at the end of the day, if you give us 5 million, overnight I can run away with that 5 million. There's no guarantee to where is that 5 million is going to go. So we really want that you show that you're committed to this business. So the fact that we were telling them we invest our own money at the very beginning. We didn't take any salary for an entire year until the Series A, and we promised even our seed round investor that we're not going to take any salary until Series A. So this kind of, they knowing that you have skin in the game makes a very, very big difference. Of course, the idea is very important, but that's almost like the most fundamental. But the commitment to the investors is key. So a lot of people come to us, and ask us for feedback. Say, oh, I'm trying to start a startup, but I still have this full-time job. Will I be able to get funding? And I feel like it's hard because people feel like if you're not committed, why should I commit to you and give you the money to run it? So that's where I think the big lesson that we learned is a commitment that you need to show to the investors.
Mm-hmm. So once you got that money, what was your plan? What were you going to use that for?
Oh, so once we got that, we quickly opened our office in Taiwan and Singapore. So travel, end of the day, is a winner-takes-all market, we believe, because if you think about all the travel brands that anyone would have known, everything is basically owned by Expedia and Priceline. So from Agoda to Booking.com, right, it's owned by Priceline, and then Expedia, Hotels.com, Trivago, right? All these are owned by Expedia. Now, of course, you have Airbnb came out. So we believe that winner takes all, so you have to go really fast. Our idea of this space is, to be honest, is nothing new. All players in the market has done it a decade ago. But obviously we feel that it was too early. Now we think it's the right time. So it's about really the speed, your execution skills, and money does make a difference in that. So quickly expanded the team. So now we started with 3 people. Now we come to around 60 people. So in Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore. So that's the kind of a big plan for us to continue grow from these 4 offices in the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So these 60 people, what are these people doing, most of them? Are they reaching out to these providers, the local people, and building those relationships, or what are their functions?
So for us, the way it works is Hong Kong is the headquarter, and it will be linking all the sub-offices. Shenzhen right now, to some extent, is our research and development facility. So a lot of our tech engineers, design, user experience sits in Shenzhen, and then also part of operations and customer support sits in Shenzhen, and also our business development for the China business. And then Taiwan and Singapore will mainly be on the BD side, marketing side, working out with the relationships with the attractions or local operators and targeting people outbound from these regions. So that's how we are kind of structuring the different offices in terms of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. And how's it going? And how's it going with getting customers signing up for the product or the service?
Well, the traction is really going very fast, to be honest. I think in September when we raised Series A to December, in 3 months, within that 3 months, we triple our revenue. Mm-hmm. And for January and February, we continue to see growth despite it is actually a non-peak seasons. One key thing that I really learned that that I would like to share is to really focus. What we actually learned to really focus on a niche sector first. So I think for us, yes, we have aspirational to build a global brand and a global brand in the travel space. So we have 30 destinations on Klook, but at the end of the day, it's those selected destinations that are driving revenue. The rest of them, to be honest, the rest of the destinations just kind of sitting there, probably here and there is 1% to 2% that's contributing. It's good for the customers to know that you have such a wide coverage, but to be able to ramp up the business, you have to really focus on, say, at the beginning for us, Hong Kong inbound was the key thing that we worked on. Finding where the channels of traffic is and really focus on those points and build from there. And that's something that we also learned by listening to other companies like Airbnb, right? Airbnb started off not getting any traction until they focused on New York, Paris. That's we believe that they had the biggest competitive advantage. For us, the biggest competitive advantage last year was Hong Kong and Singapore. And then while we're building out the other cities. So we really focus on that. And those 2 destinations still drive a big part of our revenue. And then from there, this year, we'll be trying to scale that in the other destinations. So focusing on one key part and pushing from there, I think will be very key to acquire your customers.
What are some of the challenges of scaling up this fast to 60 employees? How do you find these people? How do you make sure you're hiring the right people?
Well, I have to say LinkedIn has been very helpful. Finding our third co-founder, which is a tech engineer, I actually found through LinkedIn, but it required a lot of efforts, time. I basically, when we started, I sat in front of LinkedIn, go through, a few hundreds of profiles. and contacting each of them by sending a personal message and then reaching out. I've met people in Hong Kong to Beijing to Shanghai to even Hangzhou, and I flew. And then I somehow, luckily I found the third co-founder in Hong Kong. But that has been one of the challenges in hiring people. We were lucky we found that tech engineer. So to me, end of the day, we're still a tech company. So I would really say if we were to think about starting a venture that requires a lot of technology involved, definitely bring in someone that's very core that has that. So that till today, I probably don't have to worry too much about, hey, the site's suddenly down. Would my tech engineer come back at midnight to fix it, right? If you were hiring someone that's not as committed, I think you'll have that kind of problem. So first, it wasn't that big of a problem. And then now that he's in, then he helps to also hire people on the tech side. But Hong Kong has been a little tricky in hiring tech for sure. We have a few tech engineers in Hong Kong that also work together with Shenzhen team, but the majority now sits in Shenzhen, work together. The Hong Kong one supports the Hong Kong. So hiring is one. One very key thing that an advisor now who sits on our board tells me is when the team start expanding after 30 people, throw all the desktops, get laptops, because it is expensive to get everyone laptops, but it seems to make sense now, because as you're expanding the team, you might need to quickly move an office or open a small office next door, rent a small space there. The mobility becomes very key. But if that person is sitting there with that desktop, the person wouldn't want to move, because if this is my space, why are you displacing me, right? Make everyone become mobile so they can move around. I think that was one very key thing for us. So we are actually trying to do that. And second is, I think because we grew so fast last year, but at some point there was a lack of resources, because we've been so careful with managing our finances and resources that at one point I had to be sitting there until 3, 4, 5 a.m. responding to customer inquiries. And from there, and again from advisor, I would like to share is basically budget a little bit more in terms of resources when you're growing, because you wouldn't know how fast you can grow. So do budget, don't run at 100%, run at resources wise 120% that you have to have that extra to grow into. So it's very key.
What are some of the other lessons learned? I mean, growing to that level of people, 60 employees, a lot of your time just gets taken up with management and people issues and HR issues. Are there challenges you faced growing that you weren't expecting as an entrepreneur when you were dreaming about the business? Are there things where you get bogged down with and you're like, man, this is not how I imagined entrepreneurship being or running a startup?
I think to this stage, managing people becomes very, very key. And I think, coming from a corporate world, when, we were the juniors or junior to mid-level type, I didn't really have to start managing people. And the end of the day is, the most successful entrepreneurs who are able to make other people work for you in a very efficient way, because there's no way that you can complete everything. And I think till this stage, I'm still kind of quasi in that space, in that area and situations where everything I'm still quite involved. And it actually burns the person out, and it's also not very efficient. So I think finding the right person and managing those people becomes very key. And that is something that I probably didn't think of when we started this. When we started this, we were thinking, oh, this is going to be a project that's going to carry out by yourself, because that's how we've been trained to back in my banking days, right? Very involved, very hands-on. But eventually, yes, hands-on is very good at the very beginning to get things started. But eventually, it's really about managing people expectation, setting the standards, so that it can run as a system in its own. That's something that really came to us in the past few months.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the fundraising and the pitching, how hard was it? I mean, was it a deal where everything just fit and the investors got it and you had a great match and it was kind of easy, or were there a lot of challenges going through that funding process?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. For our Series A, actually, a handful of investors that we reached out to actually didn't really materialize, or they were just materializing very slow. Instead, it was people who actually approached us that really moved on very fast. And I think in terms of fundraising, momentum is very important. Like, you need to get at least one investor to commit. And once that commit, and then you go tell other people that, okay, I'm going to do my Series A now, then things start picking up. If you let everyone just kind of like, oh, I'm going to come back to you, I'm going to come back to you, it'll just never really pick up. I think especially in this type of market nowadays, it's probably that one. But I think one thing that we also learn is, well, because the three investors in Series A, right, the main one, which is led by Matrix and then China Growth Capital, they came to us because we got featured in Apple Best New App. And so that's where I think it brought me back to think about is really focus on the product that you're creating. Why Apple featured our app, 1 week just into our launch and we didn't even know of it, and we definitely wasn't expecting it, is the fact that we spent so much effort and time and commitment, and almost to like, I don't want to be sending out a product in the market that's like half done. So we're very just kind of like want everything to be perfect, and I think like that actually paid off. Because of that, those investors saw it and was like, okay, let's talk, and then they really liked it, and then that actually moved very fast. But there is one period of time where we talked to this and that, and it's like, oh, I'm quite interested. We met like 10 times, and then still ongoing kind of thing. But it's about managing the expectations. It's almost like a game. You need to manage everyone's expectation, and then suddenly put everything together and just push it forward.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned some of the challenges here in Hong Kong with recruiting technical talent. What are some of the other challenges of doing business in Hong Kong or doing a startup in Hong Kong? What are some of the good things about doing a startup here in Hong Kong?
Well, I definitely hear a lot of people in the Hong Kong startup saying that there is no capital here to support such startups. Well, first of all, I think the government, Cyberport, and now the Alibaba Fund, all those funds are helping. But other than that, actually, Hong Kong has the most billionaires here. So when we started fundraising, we got approached and we did go to these kind of family offices, and they're actually quite interested. So end of the day, I do not believe that Hong Kong doesn't have that venture capital money or that seed money here. They are interested. It's just about you getting your foot in the door and really letting them know of your vision and proving to them of the commitment, like I mentioned, the execution that you've done. So I think that one is a false kind of perception on the Hong Kong market. In terms of other challenges, I think hiring is one, and then hiring on top of that, then related to that is the kind of immigration law. So I think it has improved, but as founders, because I am personally not from Hong Kong, so I'm actually from Mauritius. So I've been working here for about 7 years. So I actually had one gap year, close to 7 years, and I had one gap year. So I myself applying a visa, InvestHK, they're actually very helpful. So you should talk to them if you want to set up something. It'll help you kind of set up the company and get the company to sponsor yourself. But the other challenge that we face is getting now employees to be sponsored. And as a startup company, the immigration is still kind of like sensitive about that issue. But I know that InvestHK help. I just came from Cyberport today. Cyberport was telling us, if you're part of a Cyberport program, they will also send in a letter to the immigration to try to get you the visa, or hopefully any colleagues that you want to hire as well. I think that is one of our part for Hong Kong in terms of challenge on those startups. But capital-wise, I think it's great.
So now you said you have people here in Hong Kong, Singapore, Shenzhen, where else do you? Taiwan.
Yeah.
So Taiwan versus Singapore, which would you say is easier to deal with?
Hiring in Taiwan is relatively easier. I mean, in terms of cost-wise, actually isn't as expensive as Hong Kong and Singapore. And they speak fluent, because we do travel, right? So pretty much like cross-border, English is very important. We do serve the Chinese language, so Chinese is very important to us. So these two key language, and Taiwan turns out to be a great place because a lot of them actually do speak English. To my surprise, I actually thought that a lot of Taiwanese wouldn't speak English, but actually a lot of them do. So that has been great. Singapore would just start setting up, but it looks like in terms of actually hiring and immigration, it seems like it's as challenging as Hong Kong. And I heard that it's getting even more because there's just a lot of foreigners influx into Singapore now. But definitely the market there is a little bit more mature. So they do know like what they're doing, kind of thing. And it is a little more expensive in Singapore.
So what about Shenzhen? We know there are challenges with internet access, things like
Yeah.
that there. What are some of the other challenges about hiring there?
Our VPN really sucks there. So, we've been trying so hard to get our VPN because somehow, we still use all the kind of like the Google and everything like that. So we have to always use a firewall. So that's definitely one of the key challenges. Actually, hiring from Shenzhen, there's a lot of talent. Because Tencent is there, Baidu has a really big office there, but it's actually not cheap. I think that's contrary to what a lot of people thought of. Going to China is cheap. Maybe for like basic operations is cheaper compared to Hong Kong. But if you were to hire in tech, it's really not cheap because of Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. The employee compensation package they were giving together with the options and the shares price was just surging. So they were getting a lot of good compensation. So hiring those people aren't cheap, but it's better skill set, more applicable skill set because that market is a little bit more mature in China. So that has been, I think, more helpful than hiring in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are some of the other main lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur since this growth? What are some lessons you've learned? Do you have family? Do you have kids?
Well, my family is here, but don't have kids. I think one thing is getting family support is very important. I mean, to some extent, I still support, my parents and stuff. So they're understanding the fact that, for this point in time, probably have to cut the family allowance a little bit. So that's very key. But one lesson that I learned is, I think a lot of one of the key problems that a lot of startup has is credibility. Because if you're a B2C, you don't have a brand, even B2B, or you don't have a brand. Why people trust you? And I personally really believe it's the credibility. And at the end of the day, what we are doing is still a very traditional business. We're just disrupting how the traditional business is working. But you need the players in that traditional industry to work with you to be able to disrupt. There is really no way for us to disrupt it just by ourselves. We need their support. We need their cooperation. And at the end of the day, these big companies, whether it's Disneyland or Ocean Park, or even like if it's mom and pop operator, they feel like, why should I trust you? I mean, if we work with you, what if you kind of like messed up? And they carry their brand, they have risk. So we never really go out and pitch ourselves like, oh, we're a startup. End of the day, branding yourself as a startup to a traditional business or traditional large player, but it doesn't give you very big advantage. So instead, tell them that how you can really help them. So I think, for example, when we work with Asia Miles is a very traditional kind of loyalty program, but show them which part of that value chain can you add value to it. I think they buy that more, and be able to, like, in the meetings, really carry out the conversation, be credible, and in terms of the presentation that you're showing or the product that you're showing, the app, the website, make sure there's no spelling mistake on your website and all those things. I think credibility is very, very key. I personally believe, especially when you're involved in a traditional business. If you're building, like, I don't know, DJI drone, then I think it's a little different because you're creating a new product out that's trying to target a completely new market segment. But when you're involved in kind of an O2O business, credibility, I think, for us is very key.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences with us. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.